Okay, so I want to welcome everybody here and thank you for coming again on such short notice. And over the next 15 to 20 minutes, our purpose is kind of to give you an idea of what the professional development session on traumatic brain injuries that my partner and I, Mandy Croft, came up with. She couldn't be here today, but if we were to do this presentation for you guys as a school district, she would be with me and we would be able to give you the longer presentation. So kind of to give you an idea of where we're going with this today, we'll start out by kind of talking about what a traumatic brain injury is and some of its symptoms. And then we'll do it kind of an activity to show you kind of the interactive nature of what the presentation would be like. And then we'll kind of go into some of what the larger concepts that would be in the longer presentation are. And the presentation as a whole, for the longer presentation, takes about 2 hours, and then there's discussion within that. So we're going to go into that, and feel free if you have any questions to ask during the presentation, or also we will have discussion at the end and you can ask me then. So first I want to ask about your familiarity with traumatic brain injury. Is anybody familiar with the term? Okay, that's just fine. That's what our professional development sessions are for, is to give everybody information, and it's information that applies to everyone in a school district, from teachers, administrators, cafeteria workers, those kind of things. So, has anybody ever had a concussion or known somebody who got a concussion?
I have.
All right, well then congratulations, because that means that you're familiar with a type of a traumatic brain injury. Concussion is a more mild form usually of a traumatic brain injury, but it is considered one. And can anybody tell me about that experience, or if they remember anything about it? How you felt? Can you describe that?
Dizzy.
Nauseous. All right, dizziness, nauseous, generally just blah, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, so I think we've established that most of us are familiar then with at least one type of a traumatic brain injury. So, I'm going to start out. Okay. I'll read you a little story about a friend of mine, and I actually got a chance to speak with her mom, and this is Aubrey. And I'm going to tell you Aubrey's story, and then afterwards we're going to kind of discuss maybe what we felt about that story. Because it is kind of an emotional story. So, I asked Aubrey's mother what she wanted to tell us about her daughter and what it's like to raise a child with a traumatic brain injury. She responded, "I just want to tell her story." Aubrey was diagnosed with a TBI after being violently shaken by her babysitter. Aubrey took her first steps the day before she was shaken. Today, she's relearning how to sit up on her own. Walking, however, is not out of the question in a few years. Aubrey used to love to eat peas, carrots, and apples with her fingers, but now she eats Pediasure through a gastric tube in her stomach. Aubrey used to say Mama, Dada, Baba, and Kitty, but in August of 2000, Aubrey started making sounds besides crying. Aubrey used to take Tylenol cold and allergy for her stuffy nose, but since September of 1999, she's taken 4 different medications for seizures. In August of 1999, Aubrey would watch tiny little fish in her 20-gallon aquarium, but in September of that year, she couldn't see the tank that the fish swam in. When she was a year old, she received a Winnie the Pooh set of nesting cups. When she opened the present by herself and pulled the cups apart with her fingers, she was thrilled and laughed loudly. When she turned 2 years old, she watched her family eat her birthday cake from her wheelchair and was delighted when she heard other children in the room playing with her toys, as she didn't know how to use her hands and fingers anymore. Aubrey has gone through all of this, and still she smiles, still she laughs, still she trusts, and still she lives. She's sweet, kind, loving, and most of all a fighter. She is what precious people are, 1 in a billion. Her mother says she is lucky to have been allowed to have the influence on her life, and that is something she will always make sure to tell her throughout their years together. She says if only every parent could appreciate how special their children are, and their children not have to go through something as horrifying as this. She says, to realize holding my daughter is not unlike holding a star from the heavens is a wonderful gift from a horrible tragedy. So Aubrey was shaken. Most of you are probably familiar with shaken baby syndrome. And she was shaken by her babysitter and sustained severe head trauma that left her unable to basically function. So let's reflect on kind of that story, and does anybody have anything you want to say? It's kind of what I thought, because it is a very emotional story, and I think it kind of just hits home that it's something that can be prevented. And the thing is that traumatic brain injuries can be prevented. So what we hope to gain through this professional development session would be not only to give you the symptoms in the background, but also ways to prevent these things from happening. Because as a school, we see these kids every day, and we're in a position to make a difference. Okay. It's estimated that almost 500,000 emergency department visits are attributed to traumatic brain injury and head injuries. And that's just for people between 0 and 14. It accounts for 52,000 deaths, 275,000 hospitalizations, and we can't really fill in the last part because we don't know, of those, how many don't receive care, or maybe they don't even know they've sustained that injury. Sometimes concussions can happen and we don't even know that they've caused any damage or anything like that. So basically, these numbers are accounting for head injuries. They can be closed or open. Closed is generally where there isn't any penetration to the skull. Open would be if there was skull penetration. So obviously we can see it's a huge problem, and it definitely deserves our attention. Until recently, a traumatic brain injury was considered a death sentence. Parents like Aubrey's mother, instead of planning for proms and weddings and play dates, they were planning for memorials, funerals, and that. But now, as more and more of these kids are surviving their traumatic brain injuries, we as a school are called upon to teach them. And so every single one of us, cafeteria workers, teachers, everyone, needs to be aware of the issues surrounding traumatic brain injury and what we can do to address them and how we can teach these kids. A recent research study showed that 83% of school psychologists reported feeling they had inadequate training to work with students with traumatic brain injury in the schools. The reason that this is alarming is because your school psychologist is generally the person that schools will go to as the mental health expert or as the expert in teaching kids who may be having some difficulties or have disabilities. So because of this alarming statistic, it makes professional development sessions such as the one I'm proposing extremely important, because we can work together as a team, each one of us, to address the needs of these students. This kind of just goes over some different causes at different age groups. Obviously, as we discussed with Aubrey's situation, mishandling by caregivers at the infant stage, accidental dropping, and falls. As you can see, falls and motor vehicle accidents are pretty much prevalent as causes at any life stage, and especially important at the adolescent stage. So throughout the child's schooling years, these are some of the causes that we can be aware of and work towards in prevention. Okay, symptoms of TBI, and this is what makes TBI so almost difficult sometimes, because the symptoms will vary depending on the age of the child, where the brain damage has occurred, the cause of the injury, how it occurred, and will span all domains from motor functioning to psychological functioning, social, emotional. I mean, it really spans so much that no one case can ever be considered to be the same. And that's what makes it difficult. We don't have a prescription for how to teach this child. We don't have a prescription for how they will act. So some of the symptoms you might see as far as motor functioning, you can see tight or rigid muscles. That's known as spasticity, which will make it difficult for movement. You might see seizure activity, difficulty with balance and coordination. You can see problems with vision, problems with hearing. They might have decreased sensory input, which would make it difficult for them to maybe taste certain things, or even when you're touching them, they might not be as aware of it. And the other issue with that is that it will be different on different days. Things such as the weather, stressful situations can cause these symptoms to be more prevalent, and so no one school day can be the same. So that's why it will be important to teach each person that will come in contact with this student how to read that student on a certain day and know what they might need. Okay, so now we're going to do an activity to kind of simulate what it's like to have to experience like sensory overload. The reason it's important to have these interactive activities is so that you have some basis for when you see this student who might be experiencing that, you have some basis for helping them because you might know some of what they're feeling. And obviously we can't recreate everything that they're feeling or everything that they would have a sensitivity to, but in our professional development session we like to do interactive activities that help you put yourself in their shoes, kind of. So what I'm going to have you do is, I think I'm going to elect you to play the student, if that's all right. But the good thing is that mostly what you're going to do is sit in that chair. Okay, and I'm going to elect you to use that there. And you have yours for reading. Okay, and right now you're going to be an observer. And what I want you to do is just try and put yourself into the place of Kate's here and see what, how you would feel, and then we'll ask for discussion later. Okay, so what we're going to have you do is I'll have you come over here behind her, and I'll have you switch to one of the chairs next to her so you're closer, so that we don't have distance also as a...
Right here?
Yeah, that's fine. Okay, so what you're going to do is you're going to rub that up and down her neck. Yep, like that. Okay, and while she's doing that, I want you to read that passage there, okay? And I think also I'm going to add another element to this, because normally we would have a light element, but we're not using that today, is I think Corinne and I are going to have a conversation too. Okay? So all you're going to do is read that passage, and when you're finished with the passage, ask her a few of the questions that are listed there, okay? Okay. All right. So how was your day?
Some animals hibernate or go into a deep sleep as an adaptation to cold months of winter. Hibernation is different from normal sleep. During hibernation, an animal seems to be dead. Its metabolism slows down and its body temperature drops. Its heartbeat slows to only 2 or 3 beats a minute. Since its bodily processes are so slow, it needs very little food to stay alive. Some animals which hibernate like toads, skunks, ground squirrels, bees, and bats. Bears sleep during winter, but they are not true hibernators. They wake up when they hear loud noises. Some animals estivate or go into a deep sleep as an adaptation to the hot summers in summer. During estivation, an animal's heartbeat and breathing slow down. During estivation, an animal does not grow or move. It does not need to eat because it is not using much energy. Some animals burrow underground where it is cooler. Before they begin to estivate, some animals which estivate are reptiles, bees, hedgehogs, frogs, toads, and earthworms. Okay. Which animals both hibernate and estivate? Bees, toads, bears, or both A and B.
It's so nice outside, nobody wants to come in.
Hibernation is like estivation because both happen in winter, both are adaptations, both happen in summer, or both A and B are correct.
Lovely night.
First one.
An animal's metabolism means its appearance in winter, body temperature, bodily processes, or both B and C are correct.
Like screens.
Hey, look over there. Did anybody see that?
Oh yeah.
Adaptations are some of the ways that animals adjust to temperatures, survive during extreme conditions, react to climate, all of the above.
Yeah, at least, life's going well.
Okay, we can stop. So, let's start with you. What did you feel?
Well, that was hard.
Can you tell me why it was hard?